Welcome to the Jon Harrison podcast. Statistics show us that about 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Obviously, that affects bottom lines of companies, individual, their own engagement at work, but also affects families and communities. We don't want to just be frustrated about things that are going on in the workplace or in the world. We want to do something about it. So we're going to talk about this while others aren't, and we hope you will join us on this journey.
Welcome back to the Jon Harrison podcast. This is Madeline, and I've got Jon and Christy and Melissa here with me at the table. Today we're going to be talking about differences in the workplace between people. And we just did an episode on this, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about our experiences coming onto this team and entering other workplaces, and just the things that we've seen and how it is so valuable to have differences. And we're so different as we sit around this table. We all have different ways that we were raised and different things that we've seen and different industries that we've been in. And that's such an added value to a team.
All right, thanks, Madeline. And in our last episode, we talked about this tied to innovation, and because it's a word that every company wants, new ideas, thinking of new frontiers and all these great things that companies say, but that's only going to come from people that are different than you. And I was joking about this before we hit the record button here, that we would never be doing podcasts if it wasn't for Madeline joining our team, because I've obviously heard of podcasts and listened to a few along the way, but it wouldn't have been very high on my list. But we've had lots of people say, wow, I listen to your podcast, which always surprises me. And I think that comes from, in this case, just a generation that grew up with different ways of getting information. And so I just want our team today just to share some stories of how this has played out in their work lives. And again, a lot of it is just coming from different industries. Madeline came into our company knowing nothing about what we did. Now, both Melissa and Christy did know about us. They were clients of ours, so they came in with some knowledge. But even then, Christy just joined us, and she's going, wow, I didn't realize you guys did this, this, and this, and this. So even then, she's new to a lot of what we're doing. But I think that's the point, is that we've got to have a two-way street type of culture where people from different perspectives, different companies, different industries feel comfortable sharing their ideas. Now, I always tell employees, you can't come in as the new person and say, you guys are idiots. Like, I can't believe you do this. You're so backwards, or my company was so much better than this. That won't go over well. On the flip side, I can't say, now, Madeline, you're young and you've never really been in the workplace as much as the rest of us. Just be quiet, and in 5 years, we'll let you speak up. It has to be that kind of a two-way street. So share some stories, those of you that are around the table now that have experienced this, good, bad, or indifferent.
Well, I'll start. Having 16 years of experience in child welfare and kind of working my way up to where I was in a leadership role and doing training for all the counties in Arkansas, doing a lot of travel, leaving that to go into a utility was a eye-opener. The main difference I noticed right off the bat is I came from a female-dominated work environment and had basically been there my whole career. So to walk into a room and I was the only female in the room and people are looking at me like, what do you have to bring? Now, they didn't say that, but you could tell when I would give my background, they would kind of take a step back. It wasn't as warm and welcoming. To the point, my first meeting, I remember sitting down, only lady in the room, and the guy comes in and he basically says, you're sitting in my chair, and basically wanted me to move. So, we laughed it off, and I was like, oh, I didn't know. I like to be here early, da-da-da-da-da. I didn't know we had assigned seating. And he was still standing there. So luckily, my boss stepped in and was like, he's messing with you. Go sit somewhere else. But I remember I didn't say another word the entire meeting. Like, I was just sitting there thinking, am I in the right spot? Did I make the right decision? Do I really have something of value to bring to the table? Now, did he mean to do that? I'm sure that was not his intention. But the impact it had on someone brand new who was looking around the room, who didn't see anybody that kind of looked like her, was lasting, to the point that maybe my next 2 or 3 meetings, I was very shy and didn't say a whole lot. Luckily, I had a great supervisor that pulled me in the room and basically said, "You're here because you have value, but no one will know it if you never speak up." Now, later on, he may have regretted that because I talked all the time, right? But I needed that extra push to say, we see you, we value you, you have something to bring to the table. And I think sometimes we miss that when we bring new people in, or somebody that's younger or of a different gender, to give them almost permission to say, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your ideas. Please share with us. After that, things are great. But those first couple of meetings were a little different for me. And I was coming into this utility in my 40s. So I'm not talking about at 20 or 30, but still having that experience, because I came from being what we call a SMED, a subject matter expert, and having people wanting to hear from me. It was a humbling experience, to say the least.
I think people are really quick to judge just based on background and previous experiences, and sometimes even looks, which happened to kind of be my particular situation. I mean, I moved from an IT company into the oil and gas industry, and in an IT world, I was raised in the mid-90s in that industry, and professionalism was everything. You know, you had to wear the skirts and the heels and the hose and all the kinds of things, right? And I mean, that evolved over time, and it relaxed a little bit. So when I walked into the oil and gas industry, it wasn't necessarily that staunch of a difference necessarily, but there was the perception that I came from that kind of an industry, and this is oil and gas. What is she going to do? What is she going to have to offer? I bet she won't get dirt under her nails, kind of thing. Not to make this all about the female thing, right? But I quickly recognized that there was a little bit of that judgment going on, or just idealization, that there was a stark difference in those industries. And so I was like, where's my hard hat? Give me the steel toe boots, let's go. And I immediately went to the rigs and started learning about the industry. Now, a leader within the industry had said something to me of that effect, that might be some of the way or why behind them being standoffish in conversation with me. And I was like, well, I can fix that real quick. You know, I don't mind to go to the field one bit. I want to learn the industry. So another example that I think about is like my dad, and he was an electrician in a paper mill for years. And I can remember him sitting around grumbling about the inventory and the lack thereof, and the people in the room, you know, in the offices having the meetings don't know what's going on out there as far as inventory. And so my dad got pulled into a meeting one time, and they were asking him his opinion about inventory challenges. And when he started speaking and sharing some of their struggles, they quickly understand that he understood the challenges with vendors and relationships and that kind of thing, and started pulling him into those conversations. But on the flip side of that, he quickly became the inventory person too, because he had the perspective to pull from and draw from. So he was never one of those people to be in the room in an office type of meeting for 40 years of his career. But the last 10 years, he was in a whole different environment, adding value because of those 40 years of perspective in the paper mill.
Yeah, and I think both those stories are interesting because, again, we think about people making judgments on surface stuff, which could be, you know, Christy's a black female, so they could be, I've got perceptions of that, or just females in general, or accountants, or whatever. And I think, of course, there's still going to be people that will make judgments based on surface things and probably never get out of that. But I think a lot of what happens is what you just talked about, where it may not even have been, I'm not even negative about you being a female or black female or an accountant, but not bringing them into the conversation. Or in Christy's point, not feeling like I can say something. And I think most organizations would go, well, we want awesome ideas, right? And we want to serve our customers, and we want to have engaged employees. I don't get many CEOs that argue about that stuff, that we want high employee engagement, we want to make money, we want high customer satisfaction. what they're missing, I think, is this kind of stuff, where it doesn't have to be forced, so to speak, but are we inviting people to the table? And like your dad had to humble himself a little bit and go, I don't want to be in these office meetings because they don't know anything. Go, no, okay, I got invited in. And I think that's important too, that this isn't just a one-way situation. So again, I joke about this, but Madeline came into our organization not knowing much about us, age of my daughters, and started looking at some of the things we did and our presentations and other things. We got to fix this. This isn't great. But she was very respectful about it. But we had a good rapport that I had to let go. First of all, I knew she was right. But if I said, no, I created all this content, Madeline Baker, and you just need to chill out. And I think, know your place, so to speak. But I was like, okay, let's go with it. Let's try it. And there have been things that we have tried that I may have once in a while said, I don't love that. But hopefully you would agree, not very often. And I think I'm not patting myself on the back for that. I'm saying we've got to humble ourselves and realize people are not coming in with new ideas generally to irritate us, to embarrass other people. You should be hiring people, by the way. Like when we just hired Christy, we just talked about this a couple of days ago. I went, Christy, I need you to look at everything we do. We're having Christy learn everything we do. Now, she's not going to do all that stuff every hour of her life for us, but I want her to go, I'm just curious, why would you do that? And we just talked about an example off camera at the beginning of the day today, where Jason came in and changed some things that we were doing in the past. And so that's all. I think it's, are you creating a culture where you're going to solicit those kinds of ideas? But also for Madeline, and any of you listening to this, do you feel and Christy kind of touched on this too, should I say something? I mean, just the fact that you went, I didn't say anything for the rest of the meeting. Now, the company could go, no, Christy, that's ridiculous. Like, of course, I was just joking. You could have said something in the meeting. Okay, possibly. But so at some point, though, Christy has to go, okay, even if they didn't give you the freedom, you're going to have to look in the mirror and go, okay, I am going to say something. And for you, Madeline, same kind of thing.
Yeah, I really have always felt that from y'all, this team, and that is what we preach, and we have a great culture here. So, not trying to toot our horn, but I have loved being a part of this team, to be able to share those things. But there was a time where I came on, and I can't remember how old I was. It's been like 5 years of being on the team. So I was young 20s, and the work experience that I had, I looked back on as like, well, I feel like I was just doing my job. There's not a lot that I can add, even to podcasts, like examples, because I feel like I haven't had the work experience and the big resume that everybody else sitting around the table has had. But as I've, now come onto the team and started thinking back to some of those experiences, I haven't always felt that there was like open communication where I could share like improvements to processes that maybe we potentially could have had at my last work job. And so I appreciate being able to be open with that. And I do think there's been, just so many improvements that we have, or so many things that we have improved on, and y'all have just facilitated that conversation really well. I mean, we were just talking about, after these podcasts, doing little videos of Jon for our social media, and that's something that isn't necessarily something that we would love. Jon loves to do, being in front of the camera all the time. He's over here like, yeah,
that's correct.
Love it. But just bringing those ideas, and then maybe even, I think that y'all asked, why are we doing those, and just being able to explain like the reasoning behind like why social media video is so important, and just kind of having that background. And so I don't know, I've loved it, and I loved that y'all have created this atmosphere for me to be able to share.
Yeah, but just as asking that why to you, it was not, you didn't take offense to that. Mm-hmm. And that right there says that there is consistency in how we operate as a team, right? In terms of our core values and our behaviors. And I think that's a key piece, just kind of taking it back to the VIP way in getting getting those expectations on the table early. Now, it took you a little time to come around to that, or I didn't get comfortable with this, but it took us getting to know you, knowing what you were comfortable with, and encouraging you to share those ideas and doing that consistently. So, there's some onus on the team or the company or other leaders as you enter into a new organization, but I think the consistency and how you draw those things out of people to help them contribute says a lot for the core values and how you operate.
Yeah, and I think where people mess up, not maybe even on purpose, but they would have innovation hung on the wall. But let's say Christy is our newest employee, says, no, I was thinking maybe we did that. And I go, well, Christy, we tried that like 5 years ago. So it's a good idea, but so just instantly cutting off. I didn't even let her finish. But even if we did it 5 years ago, maybe things are different in the world right now. So let that person go through their actual idea. I think sometimes we cut off innovation without even knowing it. We would never say, I'm purposely trying to shut you up. But it could even just be body language. Someone has an idea in the meeting, and you kind of like roll your eyes like, oh my gosh, really? These young people? And I didn't say any of that. But body language can also kind of squelch innovation. So again, we could talk about this for hours and hours, but it's really a self-check for you as an individual, regardless of what level you are, again, because we know we have all kinds of different people listening to this podcast. Are you being an asset to innovation? Are you doing your part? I think that's what we can easily get. We can get bitter about these situations. Again, Christy telling that story where even the person was joking around. You could have just shut down forever. Now I know you, and you weren't going to shut down forever, but you could have just said, I'm not going to say anything in meetings anymore. I could have been offended. I could have been whatever. And I think someone came by your side, said, no, he was just joking around. You stay in your seat. But these are little things. When we talk about water being sucked out of people's bottles, it's not big stuff. It's this kind of thing. When you're hiring people, you're hiring stars, I assume. You want people that are going to be awesome employees, but it's these little touch points throughout the day that'll tell them, I know this place isn't perfect, but I can work here. But if you get shut down, and especially in the innovation realm, too many times, then there's going to be less water in your bottle, for sure.
Yeah, that's so true, Jon. Well, I hope that y'all got something from this listening, and you realize that, we talk a lot about different hearts and minds and how there are so many differences in the workplace, but they are such an asset to your company and your team. And that's just the way we like to come across with this topic, is that they are so, so important and so good. Before we jump off, I did want to mention that we have released our 2026 VIP leadership session dates. Those are 3-day leadership trainings. They're multi-company, so anyone from any company can sign up. And we have a whole section on valuing diverse people and perspectives, and we talk in a lot more detail about this. So you can find those dates for next year on our calendar on our website, and we'll have that linked down below in the description. So thank you again for listening.
Thank you for joining us today on the Jon Harrison podcast. As you know, we believe that a positive work culture creates a ripple effect that extends into families and communities. If you found anything of value in today's episode, please share it with somebody so they can hear it as well. And if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please fill out the form below.